Kia ora everyone, thank you for joining us here today, and a huge thanks to those who are working here at Habitat for Humanity in their curtain bank, to the volunteers who are working here producing curtains for families to make sure that we're keeping them warm and dry. And the reason we're here today is because Habitat for Humanity is being a part of a Healthy Homes initiative that's been running in district health boards for some time now, but that in our view needs to be expanded and needs to be better supported. One of the reasons for that is that we do have the existence of rheumatic fever in New Zealand. It's, from my perspective, and I'm sure the perspective of my colleagues here, an indictment that in a country as prosperous as New Zealand, that we still have the presence of rheumatic fever. Numbers haven't particularly changed for rheumatic fever over a number of years. We see on average 160 hospitalisations for this illness that has lifelong impacts. We know that one of the contributing factors to the presence of rheumatic fever in New Zealand is the issue of our housing stock. The fact that damp, cold homes do become a factor for whether or not rheumatic fever moves through our communities. The Healthy Homes initiative was started as a way to act preventatively and ensure that instead of waiting to swab families and then after we find the presence of strep A or rheumatic fever acting, instead identifying through respiratory illness and referral those families that we need to be ensuring have decent window coverings, floor coverings, and a source of heating. Bedding as well has been part of the Healthy Homes initiative. Currently exists in a number of DHBs across the country, but not everywhere. And it's not funded to the point that we are necessarily meeting demand. Which is why today we're announcing that we will be further supporting the Healthy Homes initiative to the value of $39 million and expanding it across every district health board in New Zealand. Our view is that this is the way to get in front of so many of the preventable hospitalisations we have in this country. The initiative to date has, through evaluation, demonstrated it's prevented up to 1,500 hospitalisations, reduced GP visits for families and kept families healthy and well during winter. Alongside this, of course, we've had a number of initiatives from this last term of government that have made a difference to families. The winter energy payment, so families can heat their homes through the winter months. The healthy home standards, which will make a big difference to those who are in private tenancy. And the retrofit work we're doing across our state housing network to make sure our state houses are warm and dry. We need to, of course, make sure that the healthy home standards are being met. One of the concerns that has been raised with these standards is whether or not families will identify if their homes aren't up to the standards that we have set, which is why today we're also announcing that we will be funding an additional 40 inspectors across the country to go into those areas where we have particularly vulnerable communities to ensure that those healthy home standards are being met and that landlords are doing their bit to keep families warm and dry. So those are the initiatives that we're here to announce today. And before I open up for questions, can I just say thank you again to Habitat for the work that you do and for allowing us to pop in and visit your curtain bank today. By all means.
You said in your policy statement that there's roughly 160 hospitalizations because of rheumatic fever a year. What would success look like for you in terms of this policy? What would you like that number to be? I mean, clearly zero, but what's...
Actually zero. For New Zealand as a whole, we should not be a country that has a disease like rheumatic fever within it. And do keep in mind that rheumatic fever is not a one-off illness. It affects the health of an individual for the rest of their life. One of the other things that we've already announced in this space, given of course the COVID-19 testing we're doing at present, we have committed to adding to COVID testing when a GP is testing for COVID because of respiratory illness, to undertake the testing that would identify if someone might be susceptible to rheumatic fever at the same time. We're also establishing a rheumatic fever register. This is on top of the millions we invested in Budget 2019 into, again, initiatives to try and prevent rheumatic fever, but we have to keep going. New Zealand should not have this disease here in our country.
So is that a goal or a target from 160 to 0?
I view it in the same way that I have other health measures. I think we should have a zero tolerance for the existence of rheumatic fever in New Zealand. It just should not exist.
You've gone so far to call it a national shame.
It
Why
is.
that?
Because in a nation like New Zealand, and we are not a developing country, we should not have a disease like this that causes damage to a child's heart that affects them for the rest of their life. And this is a clear example of a preventable illness that if we do enough to invest early, we can not only prevent but also stop the cost to the health system that comes from having rheumatic fever.
In 2017, Labor promised an elimination target for rheumatic fever. Have those numbers gone down since that promise?
We have seen that relative to population, rheumatic fever has not really been budged from where it sat over a number of years. So again, that points to the fact that we have to keep driving to the causes of this. We have to keep making sure people's homes are healthy, that they can afford to heat their homes. So like all of the things that we've done around the Healthy Homes Guarantee, the winter energy payment, all are really important, but we have to keep making sure that we're doing everything like this targeted initiative to try and prevent the spread of rheumatic fever.
Can I just ask you about the Auckland Central
Sure.
poll? this
Yeah,
morning?
sure.
Obviously that contest is narrowed with the latest poll. Are you concerned about that vote splitting between Helen White and Chloe Swarbrick?
Ultimately, I think those who are in Auckland Central will be looking at those polls and potentially thinking about the way that they will cast their vote on election day. Auckland Central is quite used to, I think, the complexity of MMP races, and I imagine will be looking at some of these numbers in order to make their decision on what they do.
Helen White did say this morning on Q&A that she would like Chloe Swarbrick to stand down, but she knows that she won't. At this point, given it's tightening, it would be quite convenient if one of them wasn't in the race, wouldn't it?
Look, no, it's going to come down to the decision of voters, as it always has in Auckland Central. But actually, looking at the numbers, 2 consecutive polls now showing that Helen White as the Labor candidate has a strong lead there. And now it's ultimately going to come down to voters on election day.
Do you think the outcome of that, though, might be that Emma Mello comes through the middle?
No, not necessarily. Not on the fact that we've had now 2 strong polls demonstrating that Helen White and Labor there does have that lead, but we take nothing for granted, and I expect every candidate to work for every vote right up until election day.
Have you got an update on the situation at Auckland Airport right now? We understand that it's been evacuated.
I understand that has now evacuation is now finished and that people are re-entering the airport.
Good.
Yeah.
And on the fires down in the South Island, have you got an update on that or any idea of...
Last update I had probably would have been about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. Obviously, as you'll understand, actually the Minister for Civil Defence may have had a more recent one, so I'll turn to him in a moment. Understand, of course, that residents have been evacuated, that there has been property damage and homes lost. So devastating for the community there, but Civil Defence and FENS, Foreign Emergency New Zealand, on the ground doing everything they can, of course, to support the community. Minister, do you have an extra update?
Kia ora, yes. The most recent update that I've received, 20 properties have been affected and evacuated. Approximately 90 people have registered at the local Civil Defence Centre, and FENS are working hard but are calling upon more resources given over the next couple of days they're expecting high winds. So it's a wait and see, but I expect that I'll be boots on the ground within the next 24, 30 hours.
And do you know how the fire started as well?
As of now, there's still no understanding of exactly how the fire started at the moment. I'm pretty sure FENS will be working hard to contain it in the first instance before looking at how it started.
Is there any, I understand there's been pine clearing in the area. There'd been some talk, Minister Sage last month had said she'd recommend to Cabinet more resources and a quicker timetable of clearing scrub and pine in that area. Has that been a player in this?
I have had no indication of that at this stage. As the Minister has said, we, from the reports we've had, no initial assumptions are being made around what the source of the fire was. Obviously at the moment the focus is on saving people's lives and saving people's properties.
Did you get any response at all from President Trump, and have you had any update on how he is?
I received word that our message had been passed on, and informally through the embassy advised that was appreciated. I've seen the reports like everyone else, and at the moment that's our source of information. Again, wishing the President that speedy recovery.
Are you concerned for him?
We should be concerned for everyone that has COVID-19, and not least, of course, because we can see that it often can have a very different impact on people's health, regardless of their age or profile, and it often can seem quite random who it affects badly and who it doesn't.
Could you please give us any information you're able to ahead of tomorrow's Liberals discussion on that?
Well, obviously, people will have seen from the results that we've had coming through that things have been tracking as we expected, but I make no assumptions until we make the decision as a Cabinet based on the latest advice from the Director General. So tomorrow the Director General will present his view and his recommendation to Cabinet. What I can tell you is that any decision that is made wouldn't come into force until Wednesday. That's because, of course, we need to give notice of the rule changes that would be made as a result.
Could you just walk through why it takes 2 days to do that? Because assuming, like everybody
Sure.
else in the country, the officials are watching the press conferences where you've outlined this information. I mean, forgive me if this is too blunt, but why can't it just happen overnight?
Because new orders always have to be gazetted, and so that requires 48 hours notice. Previously, when we made a decision about the rest of New Zealand going to level 1, Cabinet anticipated that if we continued on the track we were, that we would be in a position to move. So we made an in-principle decision and then issued a gazette, which if we changed our mind could then be revoked. On Auckland, given the seriousness of the cases that had occurred here, the fact it was the source of the outbreak, we've always waited till we had the latest advice from the Director General rather than making in-principle decisions.
If the country is all going to be back at level 1, and I appreciate this is a bit of a hypothetical for you, but would you anticipate putting a date on reviewing that again, or is it just a case of moving it up to level 1?
Once you're at level 1, you're at level 1. Any review of your status is triggered by cases. So no, there would be no need for a designated review date, just if there were a case that occurred or an outbreak that would require a government response.
In terms of the outbreak, would you say we're
That's
on an
fine.
upward trend, a positive trend?
If you're saying upward is positive, then yes to date. But of course, we're always very cautious in our optimism as well. Things with the original cluster have tracked well. Of course, we've got day 12 testing that we'd expect off the back of those who were connected to the Christchurch case. So, of course, some of that may still generate additional cases, keeping in mind they're all in isolation, though.
I guess just one on voting. You voted yesterday, and we've seen more leaders out there voting early. Why are everyone voting? Why are all the leaders voting early?
Well, of course, I've advance voted in the past, and the reason for me personally is just to signal to New Zealanders that the polls are open. You know, what we really want to encourage this year is people to vote early. It will reduce any potential congestion. It means that just in case if you're losing it to the last minute, you won't miss out on your opportunity to vote. So it's just a matter of ensuring that people have a very simple experience at the voting booth.
Who should Judith Collins vote for?
Obviously, I'm biased. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.